I think any normal human being, having seen what has happened the last almost 6 months, must ask themselves the question, who could be against that? And we know who is against it. It's been the United States and some other NATO countries, depending on how the resolutions before were formulated. And I think it's very good. We can only applaud that the Security Council now, on the initiative of the non-permanent members, decided to have this, but it's only for up till April 9, the month of Ramadan. And uh, I kind of think the Russian argument that it would have been better with a permanent ceasefire is very important because it must be a permanent one. There's no way we can start dealing with the conflicts that always lie under the violence. If the war starts again on the 10th or the 9th of April, and this mass killing of Palestinians, it's nice to have it for a few days, but I'm not an optimist. I'm not optimistic about this being an opening towards some decency in the place, or somebody who even takes the word peace into their mouth and conflict resolution. Somebody could break it tonight, you know. And secondly, we got to rethink the whole thing. And that's one of the things I'm going to delve into. There are reasons why we have all these wars, and that's because we think humanity, and particularly the Western world, thinks wrongly about handling conflicts, or rather, they don't know how to handle conflicts. They only know how to handle and increase violence. They start with sending more weapons into a conflict or war zone instead of saying, what is the underlying conflict? And I will keep on saying these things for as long as I can speak. The whole international community, or it's not even a community anymore, it's split completely. The whole international world is on the wrong track. Weapons, 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 weapons. And they do not have the intellect, the morals, and the insights and the education to do what they should according to the UN, namely discuss first what is the problem that stands between parties. Instead, they say one party is bad, one party is good. What a conflict is not about good and bad parties. It's about a problem that stands between people and they cannot handle it. And then secondly, stick, for Christ's sake, to the Charter, to international law. And if you have a war, stick to the Geneva Conventions. Well, let me say, which I always say when I have a chance, it is so easy for people to criticize the United Nations. The Charter is the best document, the most peaceful, the most Gandhian document that governments have ever signed. Now, the organization is not perfect, but blaming the UN for all the problems and not being able to, prevent threat and all that is not fair. The world spends about 400 times more on militarism, on armament, on bombs, on nuclear weapons, than they do on all the organizations, everything the UN does. Now, you cannot ask a fire brigade with those resources to keep down the fires when those who start the fires have 400 times more resources to keep on burning houses and places and countries. So I turn it around and say, before you criticize the UN, criticize your way of being a UN member. And I am very pleased to see that China, no matter who speaks on behalf of China, always talk about the importance of international law, not the international rules-based order that is an invention by the United States to legitimate all its violations of international law, and the United Nations, and also that China has been a co-creator of the most important 5 principles, namely Panchshila from 1954, or the strategy of peaceful coexistence, unity and difference, that contains territorial integrity, respect for that, non-aggression against each other, non-interference in other countries' internal or domestic affairs, equality and mutual benefit and peaceful coexistence. That was what brilliant Prime Minister Chu Enlai and Nehru agreed on as principles that would work between India and China. Now spread that kind of thinking, which is, if you will, at the time was South thinking, not Western thinking, but South thinking, non-Western thinking. Spread those principles and a lot of other good things I'd like to talk about as much as we can, because the Western world do not adhere to those peaceful coexistence principles. And I could quote finally the Danish philosopher Piet Hein: there is either coexistence or no existence. Very simple, but that's true.